So we stop now to take a little break and take a look at a remarkable self-assembled micellular type structure that occurs in the biology of all complex animals, which is the mitochondrion. So inside cells, so I'm drawing a cell schematically here, we'll talk about this much more in chapter 10. Here's the cell nucleus that contains all the programming information for cells. And remember, cells themselves are made of lipid bilayers. So these would all look something like this, where the little circles are the hydrophilic heads and the tails are the hydrophobic chains. Within cells, anywhere from, or eukaryotic cells, that's you and us, there are anywhere from 1 to several thousand mitochondria. They themselves have a remarkable self-assembled structure. They consist of an outer lipid bilayer, so a lot like a cell, but where a cell may be 10 or 20 microns across, mitochondria are typically from half a micron to a few microns at most. Within the membrane of a mitochondrion, there is a very complexly folded second bilayer membrane. So I'm drawing one line, but remember that this is in fact a bilayer membrane, which divides the mitochondrion then into two regions, the inner membrane region and the intermembrane space. Now, mitochondria are remarkable things. They presumably invaded organisms that did not breathe oxygen as a bacterium at the time when the planet was beginning to enrich the concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere, and by a process of symbiosis helped the animals that they infected metabolize oxygen, because that's one of the main functions of a mitochondrion. So mitochondrions contain in this inner membrane, which remember is a double layer, proteins called ATP synthase. We'll talk about these in chapter 10. The outer membrane of the mitochondrion is fairly permeable to small molecules, so the concentration of ions, protons, and so on in the intermediate space in a mitochondrion is the same as that in the cytosol of the cell, that is in this region here. However, the little molecular motors, of which there are a very large number embedded in this inner layer membrane, serve two functions. One function is to pump protons from the intermembrane area into the inner membrane area, making the pH in here small. So it's acidic in there. This proton gradient drives other motors to carry out a chemical reaction that turns a low energy chemical called adenosine diphosphate into a high energy chemical called adenosine triphosphate. ATP is the gasoline of biology. It's what provides energy to all the components of the cellular system that need it. Prior to the invasion of cells by mitochondria, presumably millions of years ago, animals could only metabolize glucose to a somewhat less complicated sugar called pyruvate. And the consequence of this oxidation was to generate about 2 ATP molecules. However, in the presence of mitochondria, glucose, pyruvate, and another very important material that's found in the cytosol called NADH, all the way to carbon dioxide, and in so doing produce 30 ATP molecules, where 2 had been produced in the absence of mitochondria. So a remarkable self-assembled nanostructure composed of amphiphiles.